This video is going to be a little bit different than my usual reviews. For the longest time now, I've had this fascination with pre-rendered cutscenes from the mid to late 90s. I know what you're thinking. Don't we all? The reason for this is hard to explain. When it comes to some games, they have an undeniable charm to them, especially when talking about games aimed at younger audiences. And yet, there is a sort of uncanniness to a lot of them in a way, where the animators clearly intended for them to look as realistic as possible. Meanwhile, the end result more often than not ended up looking like low poly, low frame rate claymation. Coupled with this is the fact that game designers around this time were massive enjoyers of grimy, rusty looking textures and models. Naturally, these sorts of pre-rendered cutscenes lended themselves very well to horror games, or games that otherwise dealt with unpleasant or mature themes. The early Fallout games are a good example of this. The cutscenes in that game have all of the characteristics I've mentioned, but they fit in with the style of those games very well. The same goes for the first System Shock game. You're dealing with an evil rogue AI in a space station somewhere, so when you die and see this cutscene for the first time, well, it might be shocking, but it doesn't come entirely out of nowhere. I live for this sort of shit. And it's exactly this weird nostalgia for uncanny CGI that made the first Five Nights at Freddy's game so intriguing to me when it first came out. The aesthetics of that game were very reminiscent of these games of old. But that is not what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Creepy cutscenes and endgame screens are a topic that have been done to death on YouTube. However, there is a related topic that I've been aware of ever since I first started playing games. And it's a topic that I have seen absolutely no one talking about anywhere online. And that topic is jarring and out of place cutscenes. So what exactly do I mean by that? Allow me to make up a modern day example. A handful of viewers watching this video may be familiar with a little indie game by the name of Minecraft.
Why not add birds into Minecraft?
If you've played Minecraft, you may have had an experience similar to this. You're running around your survival world, collecting wood. C418 is playing. You're having the absolute best fucking time of your life. You suddenly decide, as one might, that it is time to do a little bit of mining. After about 5 straight minutes of mining in complete silence, you hear something like this. Anyone who's played Minecraft as a youngin' has probably just unlocked a suppressed memory of hearing that shit for the first time in a single player session, inevitably shitting a metric ton of 6 FPS shit before slamming their Acer laptops down and having an existential crisis. Or maybe that's just me. Now imagine the exact same scenario, except now, instead of a sound playing, the game freezes for about half a second, and then proceeds to play a cutscene completely out of the blue. Like, I don't know, fucking Herobrine slowly no-clipping through the wall or some shit and shouting, "Turn on the TV, they hit the Pentagon!" And just as abruptly as it starts, it also ends, and throws you back into the game. And we're talking like 8-bit color depth, terrible animation, and models that barely look like anything else in the game.
How's your day been, buddy?
That is the sort of thing I'm on about. And if you want a proper definition of what I consider fitting within this category of cutscenes, it must be thematically contrasting to the tone of the rest of the game, usually darker in tone. And bonus points for sudden transitions, either into the cutscene, out of it, or both. So without further ado, let's look at some examples of jarring and out-of-place cutscenes in video games that I have either discovered recently or managed to dig up out of my childhood.
Officer, as a member of SWAT, the next 7 days will be some of the most challenging of your career.
I properly played and completed SWAT 3 for the first time just last month for my Ready or Not review, which feels weird to say because not only am I a big fan of SWAT 4, but I remember having the game as long as 20 years ago now. I was way too young to play it at the time, but I couldn't really tell you why I hadn't picked it up until now, and that's a shame. Because this game is fantastic. It's so good, in fact, that I went through the pain of my mouse cursor flashing in the center of my screen throughout my entire playthrough. I found no fix for this, by the way. What Sierra Interactive was able to achieve in terms of the AI in SWAT 3 is quite frankly stunning, especially considering that it was released in 1999. The AI in this game makes the CQB combat feel more immersive and engaging than some games that are being released now in 2022. However, the game does show its age in a few ways. I got to the sewer mission in my Ready or Not playthrough for the first time, playing it completely blind. I kind of just skipped through the briefing as usual, only registering that there are supposedly homeless people and men in hazmat suits present. Sounds like a pretty ordinary week in LA, to be honest, if GTA 5 can be trusted. This quickly turned out to be one of the worst levels I'd played in any fucking game ever. If long, dark, tight corridors and tunnels with barely any distinguishing features paired with a classic shit stain of a flashlight sounds like a good level design to you, then you probably are watching this video in a sewer somewhere. Alas, I pushed on, disabling these bombs that look nothing like bombs and more like little radios. Yeah, that's right, you're also on a time limit. Eventually I got to this segment of the level, filled with some sort of gas that wasn't really doing any damage to me at all, but I'll just play the clip and show you exactly what happened. I'm not gonna lie to you. This right here is the reason for why this video exists. It's just perfect. I mean, I'm still not sure what exactly made me fail the mission here. I was clearly aiming for the suspect, as you can see. And yet, I somehow managed to single-handedly create the Los Angeles spin-off of Metro 2033. The best part is if you see this cutscene when you fail a mission, which can happen in a handful of other levels by the way, your career technically ends, and the game doesn't let you reload from the mission outcome screen like it usually does. The main menu music just casually coming in as well is just the perfect example of what I'm trying to explore in this video. But there is more. This next game is a lot more obscure than the last one, so shout out to anyone who's at least heard of it. Eurofighter Typhoon is a fairly complex combat flight simulator from 2001, and it's a pretty decent one at that. Or at least, it would be if it ran better on modern day hardware. The game had some cool concepts that I haven't really seen explored since that made this game stand out from other flight sims for me. The main one being that you have control of 6 individual pilots as opposed to sticking with just one throughout the campaign. This was a cool way of making everything seem like it was running in real time, and while some of your pilots may have been chilling out in the mess and listening to some absolute bangers on the radio,
Damn, this cat's cooking.
there were always at least one or two either briefing for a new mission or actively taking part in one. And if for whatever reason you wanted to, you could also just sit there and let the simulation run on its own, letting the AI decide the fate of the Third World War by itself. Speaking of which, according to Eurofighter Typhoon, the fate of NATO and the Third World War will be entirely dependent on the country of Iceland, of all things. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But you may be wondering, what happens when all 6 of your pilots are killed?
Okay, alright, alright. Thank you. Thank you.
I can't say I ever played this game long enough to see either this outro or the one that plays when you win the game, so I ended up pulling them straight out of the game's files. But we are not done with Eurofighter Typhoon just yet. The multiple pilot mechanic that shows the status of your characters and what they are doing at any time has a surprising amount of scenarios. Granted, these aren't pre-rendered cutscenes, they're all in-engine, but I think you'll find them to be satisfactory for the purposes of this video. So let's just say, hypothetically, that you're playing this game for the first time. As you try and take your first sortie off the runway, you suffer a fatal error and crash straight into the ground. I think that falls a little bit more into the jarring side. I have to say though that I did find a lot of these quite funny when I was recording footage for this video. Like when I ejected this dude over land and he just sat there for a little while picking insects up off the ground, looking nice and healthy. Then after getting rescued, my guy just near fucking death in the hospital bed like, what happened? They them pussy.
Don't need touch your pussy.
Now this is the only game on this list that I haven't actually played yet, regrettably so. Please don't take my PC away. I love the whole aesthetic of Thief, the Dark Project. I'm not a massive fan of old gothic things in general, or industrial for that matter, but the weird mix of the two that is present here is very intriguing. And a lot of it is down to the cutscenes in Thief, which are so grimy and uneasy feeling. And then you spend some time in the main game and it's kind of like being dropped into a Monty Python sketch.
Thought I saw something.
Can't you hit any harder?
Really wouldn't have it any other way. But there is a cutscene in this game that is a major spoiler, by the way, where shit gets pretty real rather quick. And I imagine if I played this game when I was younger, then this one would have quite frankly made me shit myself. If you don't want to be spoiled on Thief the Dark Project, then I suggest skipping to the next timecode. So the griminess is present throughout all the cutscenes in Thief, and a lot of the characters are portrayed in this grotesque way that makes it look like they might jump scare you at any moment. Most of them are shown in a sort of pen-drawn black and white style also. The background music to a lot of these cutscenes is also distorted, often sounding like nothing more than just noise behind the narration of the main character.
I'd rather not have to do this job, but Cuddy's a reliable fence and I don't appreciate the Hammerites abducting him. And he owes me money for the Bafford job.
So it should alarm you then that the cutscene I'll be showing you soon still manages to be quite jarring. But whereas the other examples I have shown so far may have been this way by accident, this one is very much on purpose. Now, I'm not going to go through what happens leading up to this moment in great detail. If you don't want to play it but you want to know more about it, then Mandalore has great videos about the first 3 Thief games. Essentially what happens is that the rich noble notices your adept skills and tasks you with stealing 2 items. The first one turns out to have just been a test to see if you're capable enough for the real job. It's a little more complicated than this, of course, and it's pretty clear that there's something fishy going on behind the scenes. Alas, Garrett is all about that paper. And after stealing the eye, the real object the noble was after, you are greeted to this cutscene.
I can't tell you how pleased I am with you, Mr. Garrett. I simply can't find the words, but perhaps Victoria can help me in that regard. She has such a way with them.
Yes, we are both so very pleased.
Victoria?
Even though the eye is defective.
What?
Victoria is quite right, Mr. Garrett. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but this eye is completely blind.
It's a rock. It's what you asked for. Am I gonna get paid or not?
Of course. Victoria, are you prepared to give Mr. Garrett his compensation?
Bow to the woodsy lord, and offer up your flesh eye so that his eye of stone may see, man fool. Bids he then the spruces to singer him an anthems, and the woodsy lord binders them fleshes to stone.
Did you think those ancient phrases were mere words, man-fool? Look at me! I am the woodsy lord, the trickster of legend. If you be thirsty, flesh thing, drink of me. If you be hungry, then feed, for I am the honey maker and the junkberry.
He am the leaf that feedeth.
I think you get the point.
Then I go.
So far, the examples I have shown lean more towards a darker shift in tone compared to the rest of the game, and honestly, that's my favorite sort of cutscene of this type. I'm not gonna lie though, this is obviously a very niche topic, and I really can't think of much more examples. So, if this video has managed to resurface any of your own examples, then I would love to read about them in the comments below. I'll make a part 2 of this video if there are enough good examples. That's a hub promise. However, I'm not done with this video just yet. We've explored some suddenly dark cutscenes, but what about cutscenes that come out of nowhere and are just funny as fuck? Need for Speed Underground was just before my time. I did play it around the time it came out, but I was way too young to be any good at it. looks like that's still the case. My strongest memory of that game from back then was literally just sitting there parked and crunking out to Little John. How the fuck did I manage to mention Little John twice in a video? That just shouldn't happen. Playing it now, I can say that Need for Speed Underground is a solid game. Do I like it better than Underground 2 or Most Wanted? No. But the influence this game had on an entire era of racing games isn't lost on me, and I have a lot of respect for this game in fact. But, other than the obvious racing and car modding that made this game so revolutionary when it came out, there is one thing specifically that made Need for Speed stand out from other street racing games at the time.
Hey, loser.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck? Mission failed. We'll come next time.
It's the cheese. Sure, it wasn't really until Most Wanted and Carbon that they finally reached full Stilton tier, but the foundations are right here. However, there is a cutscene in this game that is so fucking awkward and weird that I just had to include it in this video. And that cutscene is the one that plays right after beating the final race at the end of the game.
You did it! I can't believe it! You won! You won! Is that your fantasy?
I mean, does anything even need to be said? I mean, fair enough. This isn't the first time you see this woman in the game. She appears a couple of times here and there, and the player character is confirmed to be completely bricked up over her. But fucking hell. Imagine finishing this entire game only to just watch her slowly walking towards the screen like, damn bitch, where are you going?
Is that your fantasy?
And that's pretty much all I have at the moment. But before I end this video off, I do actually have some honorable mentions that came to mind while brainstorming for this video, but which didn't quite fit my criteria to be classified as a jarring and out of place cutscene by my definition. The first one is from Airline Typhoon. There was a secret room you could access behind this fire extinguisher next to Petrol Air. If you entered it without first getting tipped off about its existence, then if you tried talking to the person inside, this is what would happen.
This is a private room. Go away, now.
Yeah, it really ain't much now, but things were different when we were younger. There was also this one in Sonic Heroes that I cannot even remember the context to. I think you defeat Eggman as Team Dark in one of the missions, but it turns out he was a robot instead. And so was Shadow, and Shadow's like lying there, and he's like, dead, dude. Like, the fuck? And the last example is the moment in Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy. If you know the moment, then you know what I'm talking about. I've been Scav Merchant Hub, and I just caused World War III.
I want you to subscribe to me.
Scav Merchant Hub.
On YouTube, thank you, cringe.